Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm genuinely curious how this whole Russian uranium story looks from your media side, so feel free to dismantle or disagree in the comments as you listen. Let's deal with the latest performance from London. The UK will phase out Russian uranium by 2028. Sounds strong, heroic, very Cold War reboot. The only small problem is that, structurally, it's almost entirely about something else. As usual, politicians shout in slogans while the real game happens 3 levels deeper in the fuel cycle. First, a quick reality check on how nuclear fuel actually appears in a reactor. What people like to call uranium is in fact a whole chain of products and services. You start with ore in the ground, you mine it, concentrate it, and you get yellowcake. That's already an expensive high-tech product, especially when you're dealing with low-grade deposits where uranium is a fraction of a percent. Then comes conversion. You turn this oxide into uranium hexafluoride UF6, simply because it can be put into the gaseous state without a liquid phase. Nobody in their right mind wants to work with liquid uranium. Gas is painful enough. Once you have UF6, you send it through gas centrifuges to enrich uranium-235 from natural 0.7% to around 4 to 5% for most modern reactors. After that, you reconvert the enriched gas back into oxide, fabricate pellets, load them into fuel rods, assemble the fuel, and only then do you get the final product that a reactor can actually use. The important bit: mining, conversion, enrichment, reconversion, fuel fabrication. These are different segments, different factories, different business models. When someone in the press says we're rejecting Russian uranium, it matters very much which part of this chain we are talking about. Now, who actually does enrichment in the West? In the European space, the key player is Urenco. It has 4 enrichment plants in the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, and the US. Ownership is simple and very political: 1/3 UK, 1/3 Germany, 1/3 Netherlands. The Americans, who like to talk about energy independence, quietly host Urenco USA because they simply don't have competitive enrichment tech of their own at industrial scale. Current capacity of all 4 plants is roughly 17.3 million SWU per year, with a plan to grow by another million by 2030. That requires new cascades, new buildings, new licenses, new safety systems, and a lot of capex that taxpayers will never see on a campaign poster. Now come the headlines: UK to stop buying Russian uranium by 2028. The funny part is that the UK doesn't buy Russian natural uranium ore. It doesn't need Russian enriched product either. Urenco knows perfectly well how to enrich. So what exactly is London phasing out? Not raw materials, but services on so-called tails, or depleted uranium left after enrichment. When you enrich natural uranium, you never extract 100% of the U-235. Western centrifuge cascades typically leave about 0.3% U-235 in the tails. That means more than half of the fissile isotope is captured, but a very non-trivial remainder is sitting in large, expensive, radiologically unpleasant piles. For the West, this is a paradoxical material. It's technically processed and costly, but functionally waste that no one really wants to deal with. Russia, on the other hand, has more efficient centrifuge technology. After Russian cascades, tails contain about 0.1% U-235. That 0.2% difference between 0.3% and 0.1% is exactly where the economic oxygen lives. If you sign a contract with Rosatom, send your tails to Russian plants, and pay decent money, you can squeeze out additional U-235 without buying extra yellowcake, without transporting new ore, and without increasing your waste volume. For the customer, this is a way to extract extra value from legacy tails and postpone expensive long-term waste decisions. For Russia, it's a way to load enrichment capacity that is currently larger than their own fuel needs and earn on high-tech services instead of just exporting raw material. If you're watching this from a country that also likes loud sanctions headlines, you can tell me in the comments whether your media ever explain this difference, or if it's all just evil uranium from somewhere to be replaced by good uranium from somewhere else. In practice, much of this Russian uranium from tails went through France, via their nuclear sector, and then some of it ended up in the UK, including at Urenco's British site. Contracts were not signed in Twitter threads, but under commercial confidentiality labels, which is why even members of the British Parliament got polite non-answers when they tried to dig into it. Structurally, you had Western companies stuck with expensive tailings, Russian plants with spare high-tech capacity, and a mutually profitable deal to convert one problem into additional supply of enriched material. Everybody at the industrial level understood the logic. At the political level, no one wanted to explain it to voters. Now London says, by 2028, we will stop this cooperation. Emotionally, that sounds very decisive. Technically, it means we prefer to keep our 0.3% tails as long-term waste and load our own less efficient capacity or pay more elsewhere in order to signal virtue. That is not about physics or economics. It's about narrative management. It will cost them more. It will not suddenly make the UK nuclear sector independent, and it certainly won't hurt Rosatom in any existential way. Russia's enrichment capacity is around 28 million SWU, and being quietly upgraded as older generations of centrifuges are replaced with newer, more productive ones. At the same time, Rosatom is building and servicing reactors inside Russia and abroad under build, operate, or fuel supply models, which structurally reduces the share of Western orders in its portfolio. Losing the tails contracts is annoying extra margin lost, not a strategic catastrophe. On the British side, the story is more delicate. You have an aging reactor fleet, ambitious talk about new projects, dependence on foreign technology partners, and a political class that pretends the problem is Russian uranium instead of decades of underinvestment, deregulation experiments, and strategic drift. Swapping suppliers in one fragment of the fuel cycle doesn't solve any of that. It just allows you to say on television, we are no longer dependent on Russia, while staying structurally dependent on a tri-national enrichment company and a global fuel market that you do not control. This is why when I hear we are phasing out Russian uranium, I translate it into normal language. We are voluntarily raising our costs and complicating logistics while leaving the deeper vulnerabilities untouched because it's easier to punish atoms than to reform systems. If in your country you see similar symbolic moves in energy or defense, describe them in the comments. I'm genuinely interested in how widespread this pattern has become. In the end, the UK will get slightly more expensive and slightly more fragile fuel chains. Russia will lose part of a profitable side business, but continue to expand its own nuclear package. And the public will remain convinced that it's all about patriotism rather than about who owns centrifuges, who has long-term contracts, and who turns other people's waste into cash. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and try to remember, slogans don't power grids, systems do.